I never expected that burning sage in my own backyard would lead to a life-altering encounter. It all started innocently enough, but when my neighbor Karen mistook the sage for something far more sinister, chaos ensued. That's when Karen mistakes my smoking sage for marijuana, calls 911 ASAP. Here's how it all went down. I never thought burning sage in my own backyard would lead to the most bizarre encounter of my life. It all started on a calm Saturday afternoon in my small, cozy house in Springfield. The sun was shining, birds were chirping, and there I was, in my backyard, trying to cleanse my space with some sage. As I lit the sage, its distinct, pungent aroma wafted through the air. That's when I heard the shrill voice of my neighbor, Karen. "What on earth are you doing?" she barked, peering over the fence with narrowed eyes. "Just burning some sage, Karen," I replied, trying to keep my tone friendly. "Sage? That smells illegal," she accused, her voice rising in pitch. I chuckled, thinking she was joking. "No, Karen, it's just sage. It's for cleansing." Her eyes narrowed further. "I know marijuana when I smell it. I'm calling the police." Before I could protest, she whipped out her phone and dialed 911. "Officer, he's smoking drugs," she exclaimed into the phone, pointing an accusing finger at me. "That's my sage," I exclaimed, disbelief coloring my tone. Ignoring me, Karen continued her tirade to the dispatcher, embellishing details and painting me as a criminal. I stood there, sage stick in hand, utterly dumbfounded. The situation escalated quickly. Within minutes, a police car pulled up. A young officer stepped out looking bemused. "We got a call about illegal drug activity," he said, eyeing the sage in my hand. "This is a misunderstanding," I began, but Karen cut me off. "He's been smoking marijuana. I saw him," she insisted, her voice shrill. The officer, now holding back a smile, took the sage from me and examined it. "Ma'am, this is sage," he said, trying to reason with her. Karen was having none of it. "I know what I smelled. He's a drug user, I'm telling you." The officer sighed and turned to me. "Do you mind if I take a look around your yard?" "Go ahead," I said, gesturing towards my well-kept garden. As the officer walked around, Karen continued her rant. "You people are all the same, thinking you can do whatever you want. I'm just trying to protect our neighborhood." The officer returned, confirming that there was no sign of any illegal activity. "It's just sage, ma'am. He's not doing anything wrong." Karen's face turned a shade of crimson. "Well, he shouldn't be doing that. It's disturbing the peace." The officer, now clearly trying to wrap things up, turned to me. "Sorry for the inconvenience. You're free to go on with your day." As he left, Karen shot me a glare that could curdle milk. "This isn't over," she hissed. I couldn't help but laugh. "Sure, Karen. Have a great day." For the next few weeks, Karen's behavior became increasingly erratic. She'd watch me from her window, call the homeowners association over trivial matters, and spread rumors about me in the neighborhood. One day, I decided to confront her. "Karen, what's your problem with me?" I asked, my patience wearing thin. "You're a nuisance to this neighborhood," she spat. "I don't like your kind around here." "My kind?" I asked, incredulous. "Yes, you people with your strange habits and disrespect for law and order." I realized then that there was no reasoning with Karen. She was set in her ways, stubborn and blinded by her own prejudices. The final straw came when she accused me of vandalizing her garden. "I know it was you," she screamed across the fence. "That's it, Karen," I said, my voice cold. "I'm done with your baseless accusations. Stay away from me and my property." Her face twisted into a snarl. "You'll regret this. I'll make sure everyone knows what a menace you are." I turned my back on her, feeling a mix of anger and pity. Karen was a product of her own narrow-mindedness, trapped in a world of her own making. From that day on, I avoided Karen at all costs. Her presence in the neighborhood became a constant reminder of the ugliness that can reside in people. She continued her tirade against me, but I chose to rise above it, focusing on the positive aspects of my life. The sage incident, as ridiculous as it was, taught me a valuable lesson. Some people will always choose ignorance over understanding, and there's little you can do to change their minds. All you can do is live your life with integrity and hope that, one day, they might see the error of their ways. But life has a way of throwing curveballs. A few days later, I was in my backyard again, this time tending to my garden, when I heard a commotion from Karen's house. Curiosity got the better of me, and I peered over the fence. There was Karen, frantically trying to put out a small fire that had started in her yard. Without thinking, I rushed over with my garden hose and helped douse the flames. "What were you thinking?" I asked, panting from the exertion. I was trying to burn sage like you," she stammered, her face a mix of embarrassment and fear. "You were what?" I couldn't believe my ears. "I thought if you could do it, so could I. But I guess I used too much and it caught the dry leaves," she mumbled, avoiding my gaze. I shook my head in disbelief. "Karen, burning sage isn't just about lighting it up. You have to be careful, respectful of the process." She looked up, her eyes meeting mine. I didn't know. I'm sorry." For the first time, I saw a glimmer of humility in Karen. "It's okay. Just be more careful next time. and maybe ask for help if you're unsure about something. Karen nodded, a small smile forming on her lips. Thank you, and I'm sorry for all the trouble I've caused you. I was taken aback by her apology. Apology accepted, Karen. Let's just move on and try to be better neighbors. From that day on, things changed between Karen and me. She stopped her constant surveillance and complaints. Occasionally, we would even exchange pleasantries over the fence. But the peace was short-lived. A few weeks later, Karen reverted to her old ways, this time accusing me of stealing her mail. I know it's you. You're the only one I can't trust around here, she yelled one morning. I was flabbergasted. Karen, why would I steal your mail? This is ridiculous. She wouldn't listen, her accusations growing wilder by the minute. I realized then that some people never change. Karen was one of them. I decided to install security cameras around my property, not just for my safety, but to protect myself from Karen's baseless accusations. The neighborhood grew tense, the air thick with unspoken conflicts. One evening as I reviewed the footage from my cameras, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There, on the screen, was Karen, sneaking into my yard in the dead of night, planting something near my back door. I called the police, showing them the footage. They confronted Karen, who initially denied everything. But faced with irrefutable evidence, she broke down and confessed to trying to frame me for theft. The community was in shock. Karen was arrested, and the news spread like wildfire. People who had once believed her lies came to me, apologizing for their judgment. As Karen was led away in handcuffs, she turned to me, her eyes filled with a mix of anger and defeat. You did this to me, she hissed. No, Karen, I replied calmly. You did this to yourself. In the end, Karen's stubbornness and refusal to change led to her downfall. Her actions, once driven by irrational fear and prejudice, had spiraled out of control, consuming her. As I stood there, watching the police car drive away, I felt a sense of closure. The saga with Karen had come to an end, but the lessons it taught me would stay forever. In a world filled with Karens, it's important to stand your ground, protect yourself, and above all, try to be the better person, even when it seems impossible. Can't believe Karen went from mistaking sage for marijuana to trying to frame OP. Talk about escalating quickly. This story is a roller coaster ride. Stay safe out there, folks, and let's hope we don't encounter any Karens in our lives. At 17, I thought the hardest part of my life was balancing school and volleyball. But that was before the night my stepmom, in a fit of negligence, ran a stop sign, changing our lives forever. Here's how it all went down. I, 17-year-old female, had an identical twin sister. We were inseparable and did everything together. She was honestly my best friend. Last year in September, my stepmom had to pick us up from a volleyball game. Our dad usually picked us up, but he was out of town. She was an hour late because she forgot about us. Well, on the way home, she kept ranting about how we disturbed her nap. Long story short, she ran a stop sign at an intersection. We got into a horrible accident. Most of that night was a blur, but I remember the last few minutes before the crash. I was hospitalized for weeks, but my twin sister passed away that night. I haven't forgiven my stepmom because she refuses to acknowledge that she was in the wrong. Despite there being eyewitnesses, she refuses to take responsibility for causing the accident. I'm not an angry person, and I tend to be calm and non-confrontational. However, just looking at her makes me feel like she has stolen something from me. She stole my sister's life away, and she acts as if my sister never existed. One incident that really upset me was when I was at Walmart with my dad and stepmom. We needed to buy something for my younger brother, and they struck up a conversation with an old man. I can't remember the exact topic, but the old man asked my dad how many kids he had. My dad said he had 4 kids, but my stepmom corrected him saying, no, 3. That made me incredibly sad, and I didn't speak to her for the rest of the day. I can't put into words how I feel. I lost my best friend, someone I shared everything with. My sister understood me completely because we experienced life together. Now, I constantly feel like a zombie. I often dream about her, but when I wake up and reality hits, it crushes me. Living without my sister is unbearable. For some background, my dad cheated on my mom with my stepmom. They ultimately got divorced, which was really hard on our family. My mom ended up moving back to her home country in Europe. My twin sister and I had to stay with our dad. I, 17F, live with my dad, my stepmom, and my younger brothers. Last year in September, my twin sister and I had a volleyball game at school. My dad was usually the one who picked us up from our games and practices, but he couldn't that night. My dad was out of town, so our stepmom had to come pick us up. She arrived an hour late because she took a nap and forgot about us. As soon as we got in the car, she started going on a rant about how we disturbed her nap. Long story short, she ran a stop sign at an intersection. We got into a horrible accident. Most of that night was a blur, but I remember the last few minutes before the crash. I was hospitalized for weeks, But my twin sister passed away that night. I can't describe how I feel. I lost my best friend who I shared everything with. My sister knew exactly how I felt about everything because we experienced life together. Now, I constantly feel like I'm a zombie. I'm not suicidal, but I often imagine and think about ending my own life because living is unbearable without my sister. Well, last night, my stepmom made a special dinner for her birthday. After the accident, I stopped eating dinner with the rest of my family. It just feels wrong eating without my sister at the table, so I eat alone in my room. Well, my dad insisted I eat with them downstairs. I protested, but he begged me. Dinner started off normally. My stepmom announced to my younger brothers, 8M, 5M, and me that she was pregnant. My brothers were really happy and asked about the gender of the baby. My stepmom excitedly said that it was a girl. My brothers kept talking about how excited they were to have a younger sister. My stepmom mentioned how they could help decorate the nursery. I looked up and asked her which room would be the nursery. She excitedly said that she was going to use my twin sister's room. She mentioned that she had already started removing things from the room in the morning and putting them in the attic. I asked her why she didn't bother telling me before she started moving my sister's belongings. It was a big deal to me because aside from me, no one has been in her room since she passed away. Sometimes when I miss her, I sit in her room to feel closer to her, and some nights I fall asleep in her room. My stepmom got defensive and said that I needed to accept that she was having a baby and needed the empty room. I told her that I understood she was pregnant, but a heads up would have been nice before she started removing things from my sister's room. She looked at me and said that she didn't need to tell me anything because she was the mother of the household. She said she was doing what was best for her baby's interest and didn't need my negativity. I stayed silent, trying to tune her out, but I snapped when she mentioned how I needed to accept my sister's death and move on. She said something along the lines of, "Your twin passed away and you need to accept that. It's hard, but you have your father, your brothers, and me. Plus, you're getting a new sister whom you can build an even stronger relationship with. You need to move on because nothing will bring twin sister back." I noticed that my anger was rising, so I decided to excuse myself and leave the table. However, my dad began yelling, accusing me of being dramatic and threatening to ground me if I didn't return. Despite his words, I continued walking away. It was then that my stepmom made a comment that left me in disbelief. She questioned why I had a problem with her moving things out of an unoccupied bedroom when I couldn't even be happy about her pregnancy. This interaction highlighted how my stepmom often disregards the existence of my twin sister. This is not the first time she has acted this way. A couple of months ago, while we were at Walmart, my dad and stepmom struck up a conversation with an older man. When asked about the number of children my dad had, he responded with 4, but my stepmom contradicted him, saying it was 3. Instances like these drive me crazy. I couldn't hold back my feelings any longer and I confronted my stepmom, who remained quiet. I expressed how she has been the cause of every major traumatic event in my life. I reminded her that she knowingly engaged in a relationship with a married man, fully aware that he had a wife and children. Her actions led to the breakup of my family, causing my mom to fall into a deep depression and eventually move away. I also reminded her about the car accident that occurred because she was preoccupied with complaining about us disturbing her nap. As a result of that accident, I was hospitalized for weeks and lost my twin sister due to her carelessness. I made it clear that she had no right to remove things from my sister's room without informing me in advance. My anger was not fueled by her new baby, but by the fact that she started boxing up and removing items without any prior communication. Finally, I expressed how cruel it was for her to tell me to move on from the traumatic death of my twin sister. In response, she argued that the accident happened and suggested that I was living in the past. She claimed that everything happens for a reason and that God works in mysterious ways. I directly asked her if she believed that my sister's death could not have been prevented. Her response was that it was simply an unlucky fate. I reminded her that my sister would still be alive if she hadn't been distracted. My stepmom then accused me of wanting her to die instead. I remained silent, which seemed to fuel her accusation. She repeatedly asked if she was correct in her assumption that I wanted her dead. Eventually, I became angry and honestly told her that my life would have been easier that way. This caused her to cry, and my dad labeled me as heartless. I did apologize a few minutes later, but my dad snapped and told me to leave my stepmom alone. Since then, my dad has been giving me the silent treatment, while my stepmom actively avoids me. Am I the jerk? I couldn't read most of the responses to my last post because I went to sleep after posting it. When I woke up, there were several viral TikTok videos about my situation. I had no idea about any of that, but my stepmom's younger sister saw one of the Reddit videos and sent it to their family group chat. My stepmom saw the video and lost her temper when she read the comments. She confiscated my phone and laptop and grounded me right after I woke up. When my dad got home from work, he supported my stepmom. Her entire family was furious, and my dad even got yelled at by her parents. They tried to force me to take the post down, but I refused to give them my phone's password, so there was little they could do about it. They kept calling me insensitive and disrespectful for involving strangers in a private matter. As part of my punishment, I was confined to my room. They didn't allow me to use my phone or laptop to communicate with my mom at all. They said I could regain those privileges once they felt I had learned my lesson. A week later, my stepmom tragically lost her baby, and she placed the blame on me. She accused me of causing too much stress for the entire family. She continuously yelled at me, insisting that I was responsible, and refused to even look at me. This led to a heated argument between her and my dad, as she expressed her desire for me to be gone. As a result, she stayed with her parents for the night. Additionally, my stepmom attempted to turn my younger brothers against me, and unfortunately, she succeeded with the older one. My dad tried to persuade me to apologize to her, but I didn't understand what I would be apologizing for. It's important to note that my stepmom's pregnancy was already high risk due to various other issues. She has experienced 3 miscarriages in the past 2 years. While I am not aware of her specific medical condition, I once overheard her discussing an abnormality that had caused her to lose her previous pregnancies, and I just fell into a really bad place mentally after that. 4 days after everything happened with my family, I tried to take my life. My dad and stepmom went out with my brothers, and I tried to overdose on Benadryl. It was the most painful experience of my life. I didn't feel anything at first, but I eventually passed out. I don't know how long I was out, but when I woke up I started throwing up. I was in so much pain, and could barely move. I can't remember much, but I think I passed out again. And my little brother found me passed out and covered in vomit, and my dad ended up calling 911. I ended up in the ER. I can't remember everything because it was a blur, but I had to drink activated charcoal. They ran a bunch of tests, drew my blood, and gave an IV. I was hallucinating for hours, and I woke up in a different hospital. I lied to my doctors about everything because I didn't want to get in trouble, but I was still involuntary sent to a psychiatrist hospital anyways. My dad was against it, but I was there for a little over a week. I got into a lot of trouble for attempting to take my life. My dad didn't speak to me for a week after I came home. While I was gone, my dad read all my journals where I wrote about how much I hated myself, my life, and wished my sister was still alive. He also found out that I was hurting myself by reading it. He eventually made me read all the pages out loud to him, my stepmom, and my pastor. And my pastor gave me a 3-hour lesson on letting go of anger and the past. They took away my door as a consequence, and my stepmom made it clear that she didn't want me there anymore. My dad said he would send me to a behavioral camp or teen residential program for troubled kids because of my suicide attempt. I still didn't have my electronics back, and they wouldn't leave me alone for long periods of time. I had to stay in the living room all day and could only go to my room at bedtime. My dad made me keep my door open while I showered so my stepmom could monitor me. As a punishment, I wasn't allowed to play volleyball this year, which was really disappointing. I felt trapped and knew I would be sent to one of those awful camps. I've heard so many horror stories about them, so I took my stepmom's iPad in the middle of the night and called my best friend. I explained everything to her and she told her parents, who agreed to help me. I packed a few bags and took some things that reminded me of my sister, planning to leave 3 nights later. I managed to get my birth certificate and social security card by telling my stepmom I needed them for a job interview at our church's daycare. Surprisingly, she gave them to me. For 2 nights, my best friend would come to my house around 3 a.m. to help me gather some of my things and my sister's old stuff. On the 3rd night, I found where my dad was keeping my phone and laptop, so I took them back. That night, I left with my best friend. I can't say too much about what happened the night I left or who I was with afterwards to avoid incriminating anyone. My dad tried to press charges against several people, but it didn't go anywhere. He gave up on trying to make me come home because my stepmom was happy with me gone anyway. It's been 3 months since I left, and I'm relieved to say that I'm safe. I haven't heard from my dad or his wife in weeks, and from what I've heard, they're not on good terms. I'm currently staying with my mom's cousin, but once I graduate from high school, I plan on moving to Europe to be closer to my mom. Today is my 18th birthday, and I'm happy that I no longer have a legal obligation to see my dad. Also, I want to express my gratitude to those who personally messaged me, gave me legal advice, or suggested I consider pursuing a lawsuit against my stepmother. Please excuse any spelling errors, as this brought back a lot of negative emotions. Reflecting on the story of the tragic accident and its aftermath, it's a poignant reminder of how a single moment can irrevocably alter the course of multiple lives. The narrative, steeped in grief and conflict, not only highlights the fragility of life, but also the complex dynamics within a blended family. As I sat in the airport cafe engrossed in my game of Castlevania Legacy of Darkness, little did I know that this innocent pastime would soon turn into a relentless battle against entitled parents. With a layover on my way home, I thought I could enjoy some retro gaming before Christmas. Little did I know that a chance encounter with an entitled mother and her curious child would lead to a series of escalating confrontations. Here's how it all went down. Yeah, I'm back, and with another entitled parent encounter. I seem to have a lot of these incidents because almost the exact situation repeated itself. I was traveling for work again and cutting it close to be home for Christmas. This time it happened on a layover on my way home. My next flight wasn't for a few hours, so I did my usual of finding an airport cafe and plugging in my personal laptop so I wouldn't run out of battery. This time I was playing Castlevania Legacy of Darkness. I really enjoy playing as Henry, even though his quest is shorter because he actually uses a gun. I had to wear headphones to avoid disturbing anyone, but eventually, I felt a small hand tugging at my pant leg. It was a small boy, probably younger than the one from the last time I posted. He pointed out the bright red game controller I was using and asked what it was. He thought it was for an Xbox. Internally, I was mildly offended by that, being the retro Nintendo fan I am. But only a jerk would be angry at a kid for not knowing about something that existed before they were born. Plus, not all people in my day were Nintendo fans. Yeah, I was one of those guys who got into console debates, and even though I never got a chance to really click with the Super Nintendo, I still defended it against the Sega Genesis. Though not on a console wars level, I let my friends do those debates. Back to the situation in the airport, I was tired and not in the mood to be bothered, so I politely asked the kid to please go back to his parents and leave me be. He just stared at me like what I said didn't register. So I asked again, and when that didn't work, I asked a nearby employee for help and a coffee refill. The employee found the kid's mother nearby and ushered the boy back to her. Moments later, I was confronted by an entitled mother dressed in black and white, with a red face like a bad newspaper headline, demanding to know what my problem was. I can't just play video games in public and expect to not attract the attention of children. I sighed because I knew exactly where this was going. Not my first rodeo after all, but in most other situations like this, I usually just get a dirty glare from the entitled parent. But after the incident in which an entitled mother destroyed my laptop, I was much more on guard. I stood up and told her it was not my job to entertain her child. It's not the job of the cafe employees or other people in the cafe either. It was her job. Either bring something for her kid to play with or find a way to entertain him herself. I don't care. But leave me out of it. She acted extremely offended and called me a giant man baby. I told her that was exactly the sort of thing an entitled person would say, which only angered her further. Soon, the same employee was back and tried to break things up. She politely asked us both to calm down, but the entitled mother refused and said I should be thrown out for insulting her. I finally had enough and said I sued the last person like her who demanded I entertain their child because they broke my computer and got arrested. And there are cameras all around us to see who started what. So go ahead, try me. The entitled mother started huffing, and I calmed down enough to sit back down and politely ask her to please just leave me alone. The employee sided with me and asked her to calm down and leave me be. The entitled mother huffed and dragged her kid away by the hand while he cried about the games. For a good while she repeatedly glared at me. Her son played on what I assume was her phone, which meant she had nothing to do herself. But then they left and later came back with a coloring book and a fresh pack of crayons. I think she grabbed them at the overpriced gift shop, and her son played with that until it was time to go. This isn't quite over though. That entitled mother, EM, was somehow on the same flight as me, which made her target me during boarding. She made sure to be as close to me as possible, and her little boy had unpleasant gas, so he kept passing gas in my direction. But I stayed silent, and I kept my sunglasses on so she could not see where I was looking. She tried acting smug looking back at me, but the smugness was short-lived as I made sure to act completely indifferent and silent to not show any irritation. Someone else called her out on her kid's flatulence too, and she had a brief argument with them about it. She later seemed displeased as she saw that I got to board before her for business class, while she had to board for coach a few minutes later. She mouthed an offensive phrase as she went by my aisle seat. I was off the flight before the EM, so I didn't see her again when leaving the airport. When my wife picked me up, I told her what happened. She rolled her eyes and said I attract difficult people. Yeah, my wife told me no one would believe me if I posted this here. She's one of the most down-to-earth people I've ever met. To answer why I was in the cafe and not the lounge, I go where there's a free power outlet. Plus, I wanted some good coffee. Why didn't I just explain about the games and Nintendo 64 controller to the kid? Because every time I've done that with an entitled parent's kid, they don't seem to lose interest. I've been asked by kids many times while playing emulator games on my laptop, and they rarely ever care that the games are over 20 years old. They're more concerned with the fact that I have games when they're bored and have nothing else to do. And when my wife called me a magnet for difficult people, she wasn't joking. Most of the people who ask me about Nintendo 64 gaming on my laptop just have a few questions and leave me alone. Then there are the ones who don't leave me alone. I've had numerous similar incidents in various places, but most of the time the entitled parent takes their kid and backs off. The incident in which an entitled mother broke my laptop left me with an even shorter fuse for those people. Call me sensitive if you want, but I just wanted to relax and play my games in peace while waiting for my flight. Is that so wrong? It's unfortunate that innocent activities like playing retro games on a laptop can lead to confrontations with entitled parents. While I understand the curiosity of children, it's important for parents to teach them about boundaries and respect for others. Hopefully, sharing these experiences will raise awareness and encourage better understanding between gamers and those around them. Yesterday, after dinner, my boyfriend of 30 years proposed to me, but this wasn't the fairy tale moment I had always dreamed of. The path to this point has been filled with broken promises, manipulation, and a power imbalance. Here's how it all went down. Yesterday, after dinner, my 52F boyfriend of 30 years, 53M, proposed to me. He just walked towards me holding a box and said to open it. It was a ring, and I had pictured this moment a million different times, but never thought I'd be so indifferent. My boyfriend then said that he was retired now and wants to relax and enjoy life with me, and would love to do it all with me as his wife. A nice speech and all. But from the 5-year mark of our relationship onwards, I had been expressing my deep desire to marry and was consistently dismissed, given empty promises, and manipulated. We had been through therapy, and one counselor implied that me telling him we needed therapy didn't mean anything if his mind was made up. I was in denial about the fact that he was just giving me false hope to stall. My boyfriend and I have 4 kids. The oldest 3 are adults, while the youngest is 15F, who was sleeping over elsewhere when this happened. All of our kids went to a private school filled with typical Southern soccer parents. I had to endure PTA moms' jabs about me not sharing a last name with my kids. The preteen years were difficult because other kids would taunt my kids by saying, "Your dad would rather sin and go to hell than marry your mom." My boyfriend's mom would tell him that marriage would be selfish on my part, and that it's just a piece of paper. My boyfriend ended up rising up the ranks until he became an executive. I was a stay-at-home mom, so I always felt a power imbalance, exacerbated by the fact that I could be discarded at any time. I partly stayed because I wanted my kids to have the best life and because I felt fortunate and proud to be partnered with such an intelligent, successful man, but also because I loved him. These past few years, my boyfriend's career has taken a downturn. He will never be poor. But the company he was part of took a nosedive during 2020, and he had conflicts with associates and board members. He decided to step back from his role and take the generous severance agreed upon. Now he is living off his investments and wants to relax. I did not like how his career ended and how he treated people, and I had been deciding whether I wanted to leave and find somebody else after our youngest turns 18. So the proposal was a shock, because I should hope that he noticed I have avoided conversations about the future as of late. He talks about downsizing our house so we can travel and cutting back on our other expenses, but we're not married, so it's all his money/house anyway. He did notice my eye roll and was offended. He asked what's wrong, and I said that suddenly, now that he's downsizing, I'm good enough to marry. He got mad and said that now that he's downsizing and no longer an executive, I suddenly think our relationship is disrespectful, and started implying I was a gold digger. I was so angry I walked out and said I might just go out looking for a respectful relationship because I don't know what respect is anymore. Am I the jerk? At the time of my original post, my boyfriend and I had not spoken since the engagement fight. I've been with him long enough to know that when he goes and closes the bedroom door before I get in, that's a signal that I should sleep in one of the guest rooms, so I did that. However, this morning I broke the ice. I told him about how dismissed I felt over the years. I also said that we are both in our 50s, and these last few years have taught us that people at work who show extreme respect one day can easily turn on you the next. And true partners in life are valuable and hard to find, so I wished he would treat me like I am valued. Instead, he treats me like he thinks someone prettier, better, and just as loving is always around the corner. I apologized for the eye roll, but told him that if he wants to get married, I want a quick, committed timeline and genuine happiness from him. I don't need a big celebration. He listened to me and finally asked if this was about money/security. He told me that being an executive's girlfriend required certain things from me, but if I wanted to work, I could have. He said he doesn't think I'm grateful enough for the position in society I was in due to his career. But he also said that he is not mad about the eye roll. He said he didn't succeed by being that sensitive. He went on to say that I am not his prisoner, and I can leave at any time. but he also made it clear that he won't tolerate being manipulated or made into a prisoner himself. He said that for what it's worth, the engagement ring is mine and I can do whatever I want with it. He also assured me that he will not shirk his responsibility to provide for his daughter, so child support won't be an issue. However, he felt that what I said before was emotional manipulation. So he no longer wants to continue with the idea of getting married, but he said if I would like to travel with him, that's fine. Traveling is non-negotiable for him, and if I want to work, it would have to be a remote job. It was a sad conversation, and I spent a few hours alone after that. I felt like I had nothing to lose, so I asked him if he would support me in getting an associate's degree, but I mentioned that most associate's degree programs for technical careers require in-person attendance. He then shocked me by saying that if I wasn't traveling with him, he wouldn't go without sex during those periods. I was astounded by his callousness, because he's back to presenting a take-it-or-leave-it attitude. We had another argument, with me pointing out that we're all feeling the effects of age, and reminding him that I have supported him through his health issues. I also told him that if he thinks he can easily find someone with the same loyalty I have shown him, he's mistaken. At this point, I'm looking for ways to leave the relationship. I can't say I haven't been tempted to say I'll travel with him and try to find a remote job, but I also realize how resentful I am that he continues to hold the power in the relationship. I don't think I'll ever truly know my worth, but something is telling me that there must be a better partner out there for me. Upon reflection, this story sheds light on the complexities and challenges that can arise within a long-term relationship. It highlights the detrimental effects of a power imbalance and the need for open communication and mutual respect. The individual's experience of feeling dismissed, manipulated, and undervalued serves as a reminder of the importance of being with a partner who values and respects them. It also emphasizes the significance of addressing underlying issues and seeking a relationship that is built on trust, equality, and genuine happiness. When a nurse becomes upset with me for not revealing my profession, little did I know it would lead to a series of unexpected events. From bruised knees to secret dates, here's how it all went down. I, 29F, was supposed to pick up my niece, Sophie, 7F, from elementary school and spend a day with her. It was all mentioned before to the school, and I've picked her up a few times before. Sophie was running towards me, but unfortunately she tripped and fell down. Her knee was bruised and she started crying. I took her to the nurse's office immediately. The nurse, who was in her early 20s, helped Sophie with cleaning up her wound and dressing. I often talk to my niece about my profession, so she asked if she was going to need stitches and what kind they would be if she did. The nurse was impressed and showed Sophie some of the equipment she had. She asked if Sophie wanted to be a nurse like her, but Sophie said no. She wanted to be a doctor like me, her aunt. The nurse seemed upset and asked why I didn't mention my profession earlier. I was confused by her reaction and didn't understand why it was necessary to bring it up. I even complimented her on her skills and expressed my appreciation for her help. She said I was being too generous with my comments and that I owed her for not disclosing my job. She felt like I was testing her or trying to see how she was doing. I apologized and assured her that was not my intention. I acknowledged her capabilities and thanked her again for taking care of Sophie. She suggested that I find a way to make it up to her, but I explained that Sophie and I needed to leave at that moment. I'm unsure if I was rude, but this situation made me question whether I should have told her about my profession. As you could see in the original post, I was absolutely clueless during the whole interaction and missed the flirting part altogether. So I took your advice, asked my sister to let me babysit Sophia again and picked her up from school. Around 10 minutes before school was over, I went to the nurse's office with a bouquet of flowers and thanked the nurse for taking care of my niece's knee. I asked her if I had the opportunity to make up for my rudeness from the last visit. Thankfully, she agreed. We went on a date last night, which included a late evening walk by the beach and dinner. By the end of the night, I showed her the post and she found it amusing. She can't stop teasing me about it. Sometimes, small misunderstandings can lead to unexpected connections. What started as a disagreement turned into an opportunity for reconciliation and even romance. It's a reminder that open communication and gestures of appreciation can go a long way in building relationships, even in unexpected circumstances. If you enjoyed today's stories, check out the other videos on your screen now. Submit your own stories at you'rethejerk.com. Subscribe now, or you're definitely the jerk.